The Void, Series 1, Episode 3. Trust in the Enemy, by Richard Marcus Powell. Chapter 1. Namor Skenn woke with a start. There was a colossal pain inside his skull and blood seeping from his nose. He was definitely woozy as well, a side effect of the drugs.
"Is it out?"
Skenn slurred.
"It is,"
the surgeon responded.
"This has been a significant procedure, and I would recommend you spend at least 3 weeks resting."
"That is not going to happen."
"I figured that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to see me," the surgeon answered. "Still, I have to try. At least try to keep it clean and don't interfere with it."
Skenn touched his head, trying to locate the access point of the surgery. He could feel the seal at the back of his head, plugging the hole that now existed there.
"Don't touch it, you idiot,"
the surgeon complained.
"What did I just say?"
"I'm not paying you for advice."
"More's the pity. You might live longer."
The surgeon handed Skenn a media pad, prompting for a transaction authorization. Skenn complied willingly. He swung his legs over the side of the cot and put them on the ground. He tried to stand, only to collapse backwards and grab hold of the gurney.
"It'll take a while for the anesthetic to wear off."
Skenn went hunting for his clothes and his weapons. Finding them, he started re-equipping them. The pseudo-hospital he found himself in was well-equipped and clean, but deeply illegal. But medical care on Muself was sparse, to say the least. Illegal operations were tolerated purely for the fact that those who lived here were welcome for any kind of medical care. Skenn knew the surgeon and trusted him, at least as far as he trusted anyone. He knew he was a good professional who had fallen afoul of the wrong people, hence his current situation. He knew he could be abrasive, but that didn't bother Skenn like it did some people.
"If anyone comes after me, just tell them everything you know. Don't piss them off in any way," Skenn advised.
"Oh, I plan to," the surgeon responded.
"I'm in the business of saving lives, and that includes my own."
With no further word, Skenn dressed and left the clinic, still wobbling on his feet. Outside of the clinic, it was busy, with many sapients going about their business, which, being on Muself, was trade. Muself was a planet that bordered Teel and Jujunkai territory and was preliminary trade hub. The Teel Corporation didn't maintain much of a presence here because it was such a small population and, beyond the proximity of any strategic locations, largely worthless. The trade that was conducted here wasn't the sort of any high-priority trade that would have its own established colony, but rather the fringe and specialist products, and the black market. Despite the dubious legality of the trade occurring on planet, it was largely tolerated, mostly because these types of hubs were inevitable, and closing it down would only move the market elsewhere. There were less than 1 million humans on the planet, and they were all concentrated in this one township, an environment sealed from the unbreathable atmosphere outside. There were probably a few 100,000 Xenos as well, all here for the trade. It was a good place to rest and hide, but only for a short time. For now, he would settle for making it back to his ship. Once he was in space and traveling again, he could place the ship on autopilot and sleep. He couldn't stay and rest. There were people tracking him, and it would only take time for them to find him. There was a tracer upon his person, one that he simply couldn't remove. The Teel Corporation had implanted it for this very contingency and would be using it to locate him. It linked automatically to local network servers, with no way to suppress it. It was constantly updating the Teel Corporation to his presence. This was why it stuck to planets like Muself. With little to no corporate militia presence, it took them time to respond to the update. Even if they did, they'd usually be the dregs of the militia, and poorly equipped. Then there were the sapient acquisition specialists, or Sapacqs, to worry about. Those who hunted down targeted individuals for the state. They were harder to elude than the militia, as they were more familiar with the tradecraft that he was an expert in. They frequented the same places and traded with the same people. Better to keep moving and try to stay one step ahead of his pursuers. He'd known this was going to happen from the start. The second he started tampering with his implants, he knew they would come for him. He was of high value, but he was also of high risk. Skenn was on edge, paranoid and suspicious of everyone around him. Someone walked by too closely and he drew his hand closer to his blade, ready to unsheath it if he needed to. only to let his hand drop again as they passed by. Uniforms stood out. He could spot those quickly. What he was more wary of were the Sapacqs. They took great effort to look unassuming and hide amongst a crowd. Hell, he had done the same himself, and this was what drove his paranoia. He knew how easy it was to blend in. If you had a scar, tattoo, or other identifying mark, you covered it up as best you could. You didn't dress like a badass or drive or pilot anything that stood out. You had to look as bland and ordinary as possible. So, he made his way back to the landing pad, constantly monitoring everybody around him, his mistrust not letting him feel safe until he was within the confines of his ship. The landing pad itself was located at the edge of the enclosed city. All the landing pads spread radially around the edge. He could see his ship through a transparent panel and felt a little more relaxed. The Subspace Phoenix, as he had taken to calling it, was his safe space. Staggering down the embarkment arm, he reached the hatch to his ship and opened it with his combination, briefly wondering if he had forgotten it since the surgery. He climbed in and made his way to the cockpit. The Subspace Phoenix from the outside looked unremarkable. There was a charm to it, but it didn't stand out. Inside, its purpose was far more apparent. It was slick, functional, and obviously military-grade. Skenn slumped into the pilot's seat and activated the Quancom, notifying the Central Flight Control of his intention to leave and requesting clearance. When it was granted, he activated the engines and launched into the poisonous atmosphere outside. He started to program his autopilot, setting the destination to the planet Targon. Once clear of the atmosphere, he started it up and clambered out of his seat and into the living quarters. He grabbed some painkillers from the medical bay and downed them with a bottle of water. He collapsed into bed and closed his eyes, waiting for the headache to pass. Chapter 2. The destination alarm sounded as soon as the Subspace Phoenix arrived in the targeted system. Skenn stirred from his slumber, coming to consciousness slowly. The pain in his head had subsided a bit, but it was still there. He grabbed a few more painkillers and swallowed them with the remains of the water left from his last period of consciousness. Stumbling, he made his way into the cockpit and started to evaluate his position. The computer was still winding down from the jump, clearing masses of calculations from its memory as it readied itself for new challenges. There was another ship nearby, something which prodded at Skenn's paranoia. It was a freighter leaving the system. Unlikely to be a threat. That said, his paranoia remained until the ship jumped out. The system Targon was located in was relatively unremarkable. 6 planets around a red dwarf, with only Targon being populated. The system itself was situated further away from the Jujunkai border and closer to the Republic border, still on the edge of Teel space. Once Targon had been a busy planet, being on the route between Teel Corporation space and the Teel Corporation space. The corporations had forever been enemies, but the routes between them had always been maintained. This was less about trade and more about strategic positioning. Even between bitter rivals, there had been some necessary trade, and Targon did well from that. However, its fortunes had taken a dive with the advent of the Republic, and the mutual trade shriveled to little more than the black market. A planet that once paid host to around 10 million was now home to less than half that number. The slide to Targon began, the ship jolting slightly as it was wrenched out of time-space and sent hurling towards the planet at unrealistic speed. Skenn took a brief moment to activate the coffee machine from his console, hoping the percolations would be complete by the time he landed. The Subspace Phoenix jutted out of the slide and into a far orbit of the planet. Skenn contacted Flight Control and requested landing permission. There was the usual rigmarole of explaining his identification, purpose, and contents. He couldn't use any of his official aliases, so he resorted to a backup identification he picked up from an expert forger. Targon may be a forgotten outpost on the edge of the Empire, but it still had a militia presence, so he had to be careful. Even with a fake identity, he would have to land and pass through migration control. This would be manned by local police, with perhaps a few militia on standby. Security was more stringent than on Musself, but nowhere near as tight as the inner core of the corporate empire. As predicted, Flight Control granted him permission to land as an unscheduled arrival. This wouldn't raise any suspicions in itself. Unscheduled traffic was commonplace, as it was in all occupied systems. With the subspace Phoenix disguised as a small trader craft, it all appeared as mundane as it was meant to. The ship approached the planet with measured pace, Skenn assessing the planet itself. It was a large terrestrial planet in the midst of being terraformed. The process had been started a few hundred years previous, but its loss of importance had led to its stalling. It was a cold and windswept planet, with some vegetation and a partial atmosphere. It was possible to walk around without an environmental suit, but he would have to use a regulator configured for this type of atmosphere. He didn't like regulators, but it was only for the fact that it was an additional weak spot in a fight. A sharp blow on the throat could break it, causing either choking on the object itself or from an unregulated atmosphere flowing into the lungs. The former was unlikely, but possible. The latter, almost a certainty. Targon had a rocky, mountainous landscape, and he could see ice in the distance. Not the most clement of environments, but a lot more welcoming than Muself. The ship descended towards the only city on the planet, imaginatively named Targon City. It was the only real population center. Some people would make their home away from it, but this was where the majority of people would be. Touching down, he readied himself. He selected a gun that wouldn't look out of place. Traders were often armed, and guns were common enough in colonies, so it wouldn't spark any specific suspicions. Some of the guns he owned would, simply for being obvious military hardware. Likewise, his knife was out for the same reason. He also ensured the ship's sensor bafflers were enabled. If they were to decide to scan his ship, the computer would detect the scan and hack into the scanner to deliver a fake reading. All very sophisticated technology, and not cheap. But Skenn had always preferred to spend extra for a more reliable product. It was a shame he couldn't carry such technology on his person. It was easily undone as soon as a physical search was undertaken. The landing protocol denoted no airlock procedures, so he activated the passenger ramp and exited the ship, ensuring he closed the ramp after himself. Once locked, no one was getting in without specialist equipment. He made his way to migration control, shivering as the cold wind blasted across the flat surface of the pad. The city itself was positioned between two mountain ranges, sheltering from what he presumed were worse winds in more open areas. Even so, the wind was extremely bitter. The migration control terminal was fairly standard for a colony. Lots of transparent but sturdy materials, giving the terminal an open but secure aesthetic. There were plenty of people around, mostly traders and industrial workers, but there were a few civilians as well. A colony like Targon didn't attract many people beyond those who worked there and their families and a few remaining traders and haulers that ferried goods back and forth. Still, it was busy for a forgotten colony on the edge of Empire space. Skenn joined the immigration queue and waited for his turn. As he waited, he surveyed the area, noting where the militia were stationed and keeping an eye out for other potential threats. He made efforts to observe more mundane things as well, to make it look more like natural curiosity rather than a careful analysis. Once he got to the head of the queue, he handed his identification card. The official studied it briefly and then looked towards him. "Welcome to Targon, Mr. Palmer. May I inquire as to the reason for your visit?" "Looking to sell a genetic printer and the biomass to generate livestock. Had a buyer on Kemri who decided to renegotiate at the last minute. Didn't agree to what he was offering, so looking to sell it to someone here." "And how long do you intend to be here for?" "Probably around 3 to 5 days. If I haven't found a buyer by then, I'll move on to the next potential colony." "Seems like a reasonable request. We just need to register a few biometrics about you first. Could you please look into the scanner there?" Skenn obliged, allowing the retinal scan. "And could you breathe into there, please?" Skenn stooped slightly to breathe into a circular bowl in which a sensor on a stalk picked up all of the unique bacterial fauna. As soon as it was done scanning, it retracted for a quick wash cycle before readying itself for the next person. He didn't like registering his biometrics, as it would eventually raise a red flag back on Caliban. But he had to do it. To refuse the biometrics would place him in an awkward situation. Still, it would probably be a few hours before his presence was detected. "Thank you, Mr. Palmer. You are cleared for 5 days. If you wish to extend your stay at all, you'll need to report back here and register the extension." "Okay," Skenn acknowledged. "If you have any firearms, you will need to take them for the duration of your stay. All standard Teel Corporation laws apply here on Targan. Do please ensure that you stay within the limits of what is legally permissible. If you are unsure as to any of the laws, there is an update you can download to your media pad that will give you all the details," the official explained. "Now if you can move on to the scanner, please." Skenn moved on to the next stage of immigration. The full-body scanner was intended to detect any illicit materials or weapons, and was attended by 2 militia. "Do you have any firearms on your person, sir?" He didn't like the way the militia always used the word sir, as a means to demean those they spoke to. It was meant to put you in your place, to assert their authority over you. Despite his loathing for this form of authority, he had to suppress it. "Yes, I have again 4,500. That is permissible," the militia conceded. "Could you hand over your firearm, please, sir?" Skenn handed over his gun, and the other militia pulled out a specialist tool which he used to attach an electronic tag to the rear of the handle. "Could you please walk through the scanner, sir?" He obliged, passing through the scanner without a single warning. Skenn did have a number of cybernetic implants, but these did have their own bafflers. They were easier to electronically hide as they were inside his body and not so easily found. Even the interface at the back of his neck was a standard fitting, consistent with a visual implant. As cybernetic implants were commonplace, they were much easier to disguise. To the untrained eye, one implant looked like another anyway, so it didn't require much subterfuge. No alerts were sounded, and the militia waved him through, handing him his now tagged gun. "Enjoy your stay, sir," the militia announced, with practiced delivery and zero sincerity. Skenn felt relieved. Immigration control was the first hurdle cleared, but there were others to come. Chapter 3. Skenn caught up with his quarry in a diner, enjoying a hearty meal consisting of multiple foods from across known space, some exotic, some mundane, combined into a dish of conflicting flavors. The man himself was middle-aged and rather thin-set, which seemed odd considering the size of the meal in front of him. He also looked old before his time, rugged, but worried. "Hello, Adcock." The man took a brief look up with a mournful expression. He cussed. "Hello, Skenn." "Not too pleased to see me, then," Skenn wryly observed as he sat down opposite him. "No offense, Skenn, as you did save my... but your presence alone tends to suggest that you require something," Adcock replied, "and that always precedes some trouble." "True enough," Skenn admitted. "Trouble does tend to follow me around. You're a f***ing Shadrach, Skenn, pure and simple." The Shadrach was a flying creature that had been encountered early in the Great Expansion and had quickly garnered a reputation for ill omen. To be compared with one was to be compared with the biblical Jonah. "Are you saying you won't help?" "Of course I'll help. It would be a poor form of gratitude if I didn't," Adcock specified. "It's just awkward is all." "Life doesn't tend to be convenient." "No," Adcock affirmed. "Not difficult to work out why you came to me, so that just leaves who you want to send a message to." "Driscoll, Republic Senate." "You don't ask for much, do you?" Adcock gasped. "I'll be strung up by my if I'm discovered." "You can cover your tracks." "It's still a risk, Skenn," Adcock countered. "I may have privileged access here, but that doesn't mean I'm trusted in any way. If I'm being monitored without my knowledge, it may be impossible to delete all the evidence." "I know, and I wouldn't have come to you if there was any alternative, but circumstances have forced my hand." "So what's the message?" "It's on this data cube here," Skenn announced, handing Adcock a small media storage device. "Yes, but what is the message?" Skenn remained quiet. "Look, Skenn, I know you're a paranoid, but you have to tell me what's in it, as I need to know so I can search and delete all of the metadata." Skenn considered this for a moment. Adcock did have a point. How could he ensure its deletion without knowing the content? He didn't like it, but he was going to have to trust Adcock. "It's a request for asylum." "You're defecting?" Skenn looked at him sternly, dismayed with the word being spoken. "Sorry," Adcock apologized. "I've been planning this for a while. It's just had to happen a little earlier than I planned."
But I thought it was impossible for you to act against the state.
Normally, yes. But there's been a development.
Care to share?
What good would it do? All you need to know is that I can act against the state, and I am acting against the state, Skenn whispered. I'm already a fugitive, but that message makes me a priority target, the kind of target that Teel would happily destroy a planet to eliminate.
Why couldn't you have just sent this message from your ship?
No good. Too many layers of bureaucracy. Gets routed through civilian and military networks, vetted for security at various points. Too many points of failure, Skenn pointed out. You know planetary communication hubs are the only ones with the technology that can ensure direct communications between planets.
Yeah?
And I do not want to leave this to chance. If I'm confronted with a warship, I do not want it firing on me because the message got stuck on a server in the end of nowhere.
I follow you, Skenn, Adcock conceded. So do I expect a response, or what?
Hopefully, yes. I imagine it will be short and to the point, Skenn advised. I don't even need a response, but a confirmation would set my mind at ease.
So how do I get back to you? Do I meet you here, or what?
No. Try to stick to normal routine where possible. Do you have a bar or other social place that you frequent?
I sometimes go to the silent running bar after work.
Good. I'll meet you there. When do you finish?
About 2000.
Don't look for me when you get there. I'll find you, Skenn instructed. I'll be watching from a distance.
You really are paranoid.
It's what's kept me alive all this time.
Chapter 4. The silent running bar was easy enough to find. It was a good location, too. Multiple avenues of exit, good line of sight from within, and the location wasn't too busy. Enough people that could get lost in, but not so many that you can't see anyone obvious approaching. He'd spent hours observing the bar. He didn't think Adcock would betray him to the authorities, but he would be stupid not to plan for the eventuality. Nobody was immune from corruption and treachery. Of course, he couldn't stay in one place all that time, as he would start to stand out after a while, so he had to change positions, walk around the nearby streets, and generally break up the surveillance to make himself look part of the scenery, rather than some sinister sentinel. It was when he was stalking around the area that he bumped into someone. Nothing unusual in that, but he could see the glimmer of recognition in the man's face. It was instinctual, and the individual buried it as soon as he could, but too slow for Skenn not to notice. Instantly, Skenn turned to follow him. This was bad. If he were militia or a Sapacq, then his identity and location would be exposed to the whole community, and he really would be hunted. The man looked over his shoulder nervously. He knew Skenn was following him. Still, he didn't use a communication device immediately. But then, if he had any sense, he knew Skenn would have no alternative but to kill him there and then. Neither of them wanted that. The man did not want to be shot in the back, and Skenn wanted to remain undetected. So where was the man heading? The most obvious answer would be the militia. This would be difficult, but it would represent his best option for surviving, hoping to reach safety before Skenn was forced to kill him. If the man was a Sapacq in any form, then he would most certainly be leading him into an ambush of some description, or at least a situation that favored him and not Skenn. This was the most likely scenario at this point, as militia personnel would have confronted him. The man was leading him away from other people, so this seemed to confirm his suspicion, but this suited Skenn too, as the more remote they were, the less likely it would be that someone would hear the gunfire. But this was why he selected the Ghent for his firearm here. It was common enough not to arouse suspicion, but it also had another valuable trait, an excellent suppressor that did eliminate a good amount of the noise. Still, it was not quite. No ballistic weapons were, despite what the media may suggest. They both found themselves on a side street when the man turned into what appeared to be a storage depot. This would be where the trap is sprung. That was certain. Skenn looked around for sniper positions. There were not many high points that could hide a sniper, and none of them had any telltale signs. There were no open windows either. This didn't eliminate the possibility, but it did reduce the likelihood. The storage depot had many corners and hiding places, and there would be at least one person hidden somewhere nearby. The man was about to turn a corner and exit his line of sight. Far enough, Skenn whispered to himself and drew the Ghent, shooting the man in the back. Low enough not to be instantly fatal, but still incapacitating. The report of the gun was loud, but suppressed just enough of the noise not to carry too far. It probably drew some attention, but one shot alone was not enough to raise an alarm. At the moment, it was just a sudden noise. The man's groaning was more of a concern. The Skenn stood still, allowing himself to swear and curse as he writhed in pain. He knew patience was a key virtue in any standoff. Wait for a moment. Wait for the other person's nerve to break. He was rewarded by the sight of someone's head appearing around a corner, trying to see where he was. Now he knew where at least one of the ambushers were. Scanning the environment, he judged where the others could be. If there were more, they would want to catch him in a crossfire, but at an angle where they wouldn't risk any stray projectiles hitting their colleagues. There was one obvious candidate. Skenn strode up slowly to the side of the container, edging along the side of it with his gun trained on where he knew the confirmed target was. He sidled up to the corner and could hear the labored breathing of another being and allowed himself a wry smile, pleased with his own instincts. He hunkered down, reducing his height profile as much as possible, before bracing himself into a stable position. Flipping around the corner at waist height, Skenn fired upward at the surprised individual, hitting him twice. The body dropped to the ground, completely limp. Which was an inconvenience. Any blood on his clothes would be a clear indicator of nefarious deeds, so he would have to abandon them if need be. He focused his attention on where he knew the other target was, but was surprised to see he couldn't see him from this vantage point. These two ambushers couldn't coordinate with each other visually. Standing up, he started to walk over to the other container. He didn't run, as running made far more noise, and he knew his target was already panicking, which was why he poked his head around the corner to see what he was doing. Patience. Be slow, assured, and take your time. Take everything in. Review all the angles. In between hoarse screams, he could hear running. From where his target was and where he could hear him, he only needed to extrapolate his intended direction. He trained his gun on where he expected him to be, but followed his trail, sneaking behind him. This was like a child's game, but with adult consequences. Skenn again found himself at a corner. This time he had a shadow to assist him. It was shallow and close to the side of the container, but it was enough for him to see the ambusher's head was facing the other way. He turned the corner, this time upright and slowly, took deliberate aim. Confident that his assailants were defeated, Skenn emerged and headed toward the wounded man. He still kept an observant eye out for his surroundings, but his instincts were keeping quiet for now. He stood over the man now, whose screams had subsided to a low moan. He was face down on the ground. "I'm going to turn you over now. If you try anything, I'm going to shoot you in the head." Skenn pressed the Ghent to the man's temple to remind him of the weapon's proximity. He rolled him over, but stood behind the direction he was rolling him, as not to expose himself to any hidden weapons. Again, slowly but surely. "So, you're Sapacq, obviously. You work for Teel, or you independent?" Skenn sighed and stood. The man screeched in pain, a guttural sound that was more animal than human. "I guess it doesn't matter either way. How did you know I was here?" "Didn't. Teel just wanted to cover as many bases as possible. Sent us to a number of planets his advisors had deemed likely you'd go. From where you'd been last detected. We got lucky." "Yes, you did," Skenn observed. "How many?" "All of them," the man answered. "Have you any idea how much of an acquisition fee is on your head right now?" "The value means little to me. Any amount means my death." "Big enough that even Mira Kandor's taken an interest." "I'm flattered," Skenn dismissed. "I take it all three of you were registered with Dead Man's Handle." "What Sapacq isn't?" Dead Man's Handle was a service provided by the Teel Corporation They periodically contacted an implant in the individual that checked for vital signs. If the individual was wounded, the local paramedics were alerted, and if they died, the authorities were notified. It was sold as a means of providing support to those engaged in a dangerous business, but it was really there for monitoring purposes. Well, I can't hang around then. Wait, Skenn, I'm under no illusions here, but before you do it, I want to know one thing. What? How did you break the conditioning? Should have chosen better last words. The militia would undoubtedly be on the scene before long, so Skenn had to exit the scene quickly. He'd been hoping to avoid any kind of confrontation while he was here, but that ship had now sailed. The gun was useless as well now. It would be tracked to the tag to this location and be tied to these deaths. Through it, they could also locate him. This made the gun a liability for him now. He hated to abandon his weapon, but it was a necessity now. This also meant that leaving Targan was going to be an issue, but he had a plan for that too. Dropping the gun by the corpse, Skenn looked for a rear exit to the site. Chapter 5. Hello again, Adcock. Skenn, how do you keep doing that? Practice, he revealed, sitting down opposite him. The Silent Running was a typical colony bar. It was looked after well, but you could see the wear and tear committed by hard-drinking labourers. There was a raucous crowd populating the bar at that moment. It was good for blending in, but Skenn didn't like all the noise. He didn't like having one of his senses suppressed by static. You want a drink? Adcock asked. Fruit juice will do me, Skenn responded. No beer? No thanks. You'll stand out in here with juice. Adcock, I have more pressing issues. Suit yourself. Adcock shrugged and ordered a fruit juice through the console built into their table. So, I presume there were no complications. None that I know of, Adcock revealed. I've deleted all traces of the messages in the logs I am aware of, but there are no absolute guarantees. Any response? Very brief response. Just said, accepted with caveats upon surrender. We'll meet at rendezvous. Present no arms. They also supplied a code word. Kodiak. I expected extra conditions, Skenn mused. They're going to be suspicious of me. Can you blame them? I never expected anything different, but needs must, Skenn observed. My security takes precedence at the moment. What's with the code word? Just something to let them know not to vaporize me instantly. It's not meant to be anything more than a call sign, Skenn explained. I don't expect anything less than a warship to meet me. They're bound to be wary of a trap. A waiter arrived at the table to deliver Skenn's drink. He sipped at it, savoring the blend of fruits. What are you doing? Why are you doing all of this, Skenn? Adcock wondered. Teel will be hunting you until the end of time. No matter where you go, you'll always be looking over your shoulder. I've always lived with that, Skenn replied. But I will no longer be owned. That's what this is all about. Independence. I don't expect anyone to understand my situation, Skenn dismissed. When you have a reputation like I do, empathy is in rather short supply. Well, good luck with that in this universe. One other thing, Adcock. I had to kill 3 Sapacqs today. I was hoping to avoid violence, but that wasn't to be. You do like to do things the hard way. They probably won't be able to link me to you, but you may want to think about leaving Targan for somewhere else. I would. Damn, this isn't exactly a paradise, but it was a steady job. Take this. It may help offset the disruption. Skenn handed Adcock a data cube. When he proceeded to check with his media pad, his eyes widened when he saw the value of the currency stored upon it. Holy Skenn, this is a small fortune. Have you always had this kind of money? There are some benefits to what I do, Skenn admitted, but I have little use for it myself. Well, I guess this would help offset the disruption, Adcock nodded. I always pay well. Money is a poor foundation to build a relationship on, but it does help foster trust, Skenn posited, and what you've done is of great value to me. I wasn't expecting that, but I appreciate it, Adcock thanked. But how are you going to get off planet now? They'll know it was you who killed them if your gun was tagged.
Can't go through immigration control now, that's for sure, Skenn noted. But I should be able to get through the perimeter without too much trouble. You'll have the planetary defenses turned on you if you leave without permission, Skenn. Let me worry about that. The Phoenix is a lot more nimble than it looks. Well, good luck with what you're doing, Adcock blessed. Hope you find the independence you're after. So do I. So do I. Chapter 6. Schafer authorized the request he had been sent, allocating the work to the appropriate team. Another request arrived immediately after. The decisions never ceased, even when they were heading to a colony to assist in a supply run and patrol the area. The patrol was the focus, in order to investigate the claims of Teel Corporation activity in the area, but their size and capacity always meant they would end up helping with civilian logistics. It was acceptable in Republic territory, as it was a safe place, relatively speaking, and insurance covered the cost of goods lost in military action. Travelers were a different proposition, and had to be made aware of the risks they took boarding a military vessel. Most preferred civilian transport, but there were always some who could not wait. The border with Teel Corporation space was the most active in the corporate border zones, but military incursions were still rare. In the early days of the Republic, they had been common, but the Republic had always fended them off. Now, the prevailing standpoint was that of a Cold War, held in place by a military deadlock. Although the likelihood of any military presence was low, it was always worth investigating these claims. Captain, there's a priority signal from the Senate. Put it on screen then. It's just for you and Commander Voight, sir. Put it through to conference room 1 then, and inform the commander. Schafer moved to the rear of the command deck and entered the conference room. Kane, can you activate the display, please? Certainly, Captain. The wall came alive with a communication stream, displaying the Republic logo. The screen flickering momentarily before the face of a senior woman appeared on the screen. Admiral Wells, Schafer acknowledged. Hello, Carl. How are you? Never better, he responded. How are Alice and Theodore? Theo's business is struggling, but he's managing. Alice made Lieutenant Commander a few weeks ago. Excellent. She's doing well then. It surprised me, but yes, she's taken well to military life. Seems it was just me she couldn't obey, the Admiral related. Where's Commander Voight? She needs to hear this. She's on her way. Should be here any moment. Okay, we'll start now and you can fill her in on anything she misses. So, what can I do for you, Admiral? I have a priority mission for you, Captain. You're the closest ship we have to the target, so we're redirecting you. You can return to your current directives afterwards. What's the priority target then? It's a potential defector from the Teel Corporation who wants to surrender in a specified system. Just a single defector? If he is who he say he is, it's a high-value defector. Who is it? Have you ever heard the name Namor Skenn in your time? I can't say I have, to be honest. I would have been surprised if you had, but he's quite well known in the intelligence circles, Wells added. One of those characters you hear plenty of rumors about, but have little hard evidence for. Some are convinced that he was a convenient phantom intended to distract us. Commander Voight entered the room, immediately standing alert to the Admiral's presence. Admiral? Voight greeted. No need for the formalities, Commander. Admiral Wells beckoned. Take a seat. The Admiral was just informing we were to pick up a defector named Namor Skenn. You familiar with him? Can't say I am. If his notoriety is anything to go by, he's a nasty piece of work. Ruthless, proficient, and not afraid of collateral damage. He's suspected to be behind hundreds of deaths across the universe, and that's just the ones we have evidence for, Admiral Wells described. He's reputed to be one of the best of Teel's covert operatives, and he would be the first to approach us. You think his defection is genuine? We think the possibility that it is makes the risk worthwhile. It would be hard to trust the information gained from such a source, Voight interjected. Agreed. In isolation it would be, but intelligence would use it in conjunction with other data to build up a bigger picture, Wells continued. If it turns out to be valid data, then we have gained a valuable asset, may even be able to clear up a number of old cases. What does he get in return? Immunity to any crimes he has committed to our space and citizenship. It galls me to grant such a man citizenship, Schafer growled. He's the kind of thing we should be defending citizens against. You'll hear no argument from me, Wells agreed. But it's one of those dirty bits of business that needs to be done to protect the Republic.
I presume we're to pick him up and then bring him to Triskel.
Pick him up, yes. But I want you to do an initial assessment of the situation and see what information he offers willingly. We'll see how this goes before we make a decision whether to bring him in as a citizen or whether to arrest him. Any reason to suspect an ambush? Voight inquired. None at the moment, but we do have the Resolute, the Wren, and the Lai Sun on an interception course in case you run into any trouble, Wells elaborated. He's picked the Ligon system to meet in, and he's chosen it because it's the easiest system on the border for us to get reinforcements to. That's sending us a message in itself.
Maybe it could be a double bluff.
Teel would be foolish to attack us there. It would be too easy for us to repel their attack, Wells reasoned. That said, trust is an issue here, hence the backup.
If things go south, when can we expect them?
They're only a few jumps away. By the time you get there, they should be within half an hour.
That's a long time in battle.
I know, but if an attack does occur and support is too far away, fall back to the Tessima Gate. That's where the relief force will come in, Wells instructed, but they won't be due for a while. I just want you there ahead of time just in case. The reinforcements should be close by the time he arrives. This is a significant investment in resources for one man. Is he that valuable? Voight questioned. Strategically quite easily, Wells summarized. This could give us a crucial advantage for years to come.
When do we need to be in Ligon?
He's expected to be there within the next 6 hours.
We'll have to get going then.
Just one last thing, Captain. He will identify himself by name, but he will also use a code word. Kodiak, Wells added. We'll send you a mission profile shortly, but as you can understand, this is all happening very quickly.
Understood. I'll keep you informed. Schafer out.
Schafer and Voight both stood and returned to the command deck.
Pilot Awimi, new course. Take us to the Ligon system. All other destinations are on hold until further notice.
Yes, sir, the pilot confirmed.
Thoughts, Commander?
I'm a little suspicious as to how quickly this is all happening. I don't trust deals done in a hurry.
I agree. You suspect an ambush?
No, sir. The choice of Ligon would indicate otherwise. As the Admiral says, it's too easy for us to get reinforcements there. Even if it is a double bluff, an attack there would be hard-fought either way, Voight pointed out. There are much better avenues of attack.
Never underestimate the value of being unashamedly brazen, though, Schafer advised. Sometimes the obvious can catch people off guard.
Not in this case, sir. Not with advance warning. Schafer was amused by her strategizing. Voight was damn sure about her assessments. Few people were so assured, but she was good at playing devil's advocate as well, always asking questions, even if she knew the answers to them. She knew how to get people thinking, which was a much overlooked trait.
I agree. It will be unlikely to the point of absurdity.
What do you make of this, sir?
I don't like intrigue any more than I like politics, Commander. The people who play this game are eminently untrustworthy. I like to leave that side of things to intelligence.
I find it distasteful too, but it is a game, and it can be played to our advantage, Voight suggested. After all, if the devil is always compelled to lie, you can still get the truth.
Huh. I like that.
Chapter 7.
The escape from Targan had been complicated at the very least. Getting to his ship had been simple enough, but the very second he launched, it had been combat all the way. He'd evaded the planetary defenses easily enough. They weren't good enough to hit a target as dexterous as the subspace Phoenix. However, some malicious ships launched soon after and started following him, soon to be joined by the first of the Sapacqs into the system. Though the militia eventually pulled away, more and more Sapacqs joined in the chase. They were communicating with each other, putting aside any rivalries in pursuit of a large payday. A large acquisition fee split many ways was still better than no acquisition fee. After 3 systems, he'd already acquired 5 tails, and by the 10th system, he had a small fleet following him. With all the incoming fire, Skenn was feeling the pressure. The one advantage he did enjoy was that he'd fitted the Phoenix for speed and agility. Some preferred firepower or stealth, but his preference had always been for the ability to escape. The philosophy was paying dividends now, allowing him to keep ahead of the pack. He was able to jump first, to slide first, and maneuver faster. Without that, he would have been dead already. He got to the gate and jumped, the pack arriving just as he left the system. The next system was Noro, and the first Republic border system. This fact may have dissuaded any militia, but it wouldn't stop most Sapacqs. Most those affiliated with the corporation didn't care much for rules and regulations. They weren't officially military, so they exploited that fact to its utmost. Skenn entered Noro, but upon arrival he found alarms blaring instantly. He was already in missile lock, something that should be impossible this quickly. As he geared up for the slide, he analyzed the sensor array. The ship profile was known to him. It was the Black Sun. "Fuck!" Skenn cursed as the missile crashed into the Phoenix. Fortunately, the damage was not severe enough to prevent him from entering the slide. He checked the damage control. Significant damage to ship armor, but no systems damage. He was fortunate. The presence of the Black Sun indicated the presence of Mira Kandor. This was a new proposition entirely. Mira was a class above the average Sapacq, though the word didn't really apply in this case. Mira was an unashamed mercenary, willing to take on any job, as long as the money was good. It didn't matter how dirty or dangerous the job was, Mira would do it. His ethics were bad enough that it made Skenn look saintly by comparison. Despite his dismissive response on Targon, Skenn knew full well Mira's reputation and was wary. Even Con Teel respected Mira's abilities, and that was a man who felt the whole universe was beneath him. No, this was bad. With Mira Kandor in pursuit, his chances looked much slimmer. Lygon was another 2 jumps away. His freedom was within reach, but it was in danger of being snatched away from him at the last moment. Skenn readied a proximity mine. It was a bad idea to deposit one on a jump gate, especially in a Republic system, but he had to dissuade his pursuers. He dropped out of the slide close to the gate, the Black Sun emerging a fraction of a second behind him, landing closer to the gate than he was. Mira must have initiated his slide at the same time. This displayed prescient prediction to the edge of precognition. Skenn dropped the proximity mine and immediately went into a spin and veered off towards the gate, but at an angle. The Black Sun launched missiles that narrowly missed the subspace Phoenix, traveling for a while before arcing back around. They acquired him and would be incoming very quickly. He deployed countermeasures quickly, launching chaff into the missile's path, which set a couple off prematurely. There were still 2 incoming. Skenn got within activation proximity of the gate, just as the Sapacq pack appeared. The proximity mine was triggered and took out one of the ships and damaging another. The subspace Phoenix and the Black Sun jumped into the next system, Lysera, simultaneously. As they both emerged on the other side, Skenn was already initiating his slide when Mira Kandor fired a volley of flak projectiles that shredded the side of the Phoenix. Skenn was thrown around by the impact, but his harness secured him and he punched the slide button. It took a couple of moments of being pounded by projectiles for the slide to start, but there was sweet relief when it started. Alarms and alerts sounded off, producing a cacophony of calamity. He started to check what had been damaged. He could see systems starting to fail and felt a sinking feeling. Power was failing, and he started to doubt whether he could see the end of the slide, let alone leave the system. Anticipating that Mira Kandor would emerge from the slide at the same time, Skenn prepared. He set all of the weapons to cover the entire sphere surrounding him, to fire in all directions at once. They swiveled on their gimbals and positioned themselves to cover the full arc. He couldn't target Mira Kandor until they emerged from the slide, but if he fired in all directions, he would at least get something into his general direction. This was very much a desperation move on Skenn's part. He didn't expect to damage Mira Kandor, just distract them long enough for him to react. Emerging from the slide, Skenn let loose, firing in all directions. This had the desired effect of disorientating Mira Kandor, who emerged at the same time. Skenn pushed the Phoenix towards the final gate to Lygon, only to feel his heart sink as he noticed the navigation computer failing. Without this, he could not connect to the gate to initiate the jump. He was stuck short of his target. "Fuck!" he screamed again. He swung the Phoenix around the far side of the gate, placing the structure between them. Whatever happened in the conflict to come, he had to make sure he kept the gate between him and Mira Kandor. The pursuing pack emerged from their individual slides, now presenting Skenn with a suffit of targets. He might not be able to escape, but he was going to go down hard. "Come on, you bastards! Give us a fight!" he screamed defiantly. Targeting as many ships as possible with the independent systems, he fired everything he could in quick succession, jinking around the gate's superstructure as he did so. The cloud of Sapacq ships attacked from every direction, going so far as to hit each other in the desperate scramble to claim the kill. Skenn kept the aerobatics up as long as possible, but the Phoenix was starting to lose more and more systems. It was becoming less agile and handling more like the freighter it appeared to be. They were starting to hit him more frequently now, and the ship wouldn't be able to maintain structural integrity for much longer. Then, a miracle. The gate activated, and a colossal ship appeared from the other side. The size of it was astonishing, all the gathered ships resembling little more than a couple of ants against the behemoth. "Holy fuck!" Skenn gasped in awe. He noticed Mira Kandor immediately jump out of the system. He'd instantly recognized the chase was over and bailed. The decision was instant, with no internal debate. It was clear the mercenary had made all his decisions before he'd even fired his first shot. The rest of the mercenaries kept after Skenn, and he desperately tried to avoid the incoming fire, but his ship was rapidly disintegrating. Then, the Liberator opened fire. A massive salvo of firepower rained down on the clustered Sapacqs, destroying 6 ships in 2 seconds. This instantly sent a message to the other Sapacqs, and they started to leave, entering slides as quickly as their ships could manage. 2 ships remained to continue the pursuit, too close to their quarry to quit. Skenn remembered what he needed to do and contacted the massive ship. "Republic ship, this is Namor Skenn. Code word, Kodiak," he bellowed. "I request asylum." The remaining 2 ships were picked off with almost casual indifference. "Acknowledged. Please follow the navigation beacon to the beta hangar." "I'm afraid I have no means to follow the beacon. All my navigational hardware has been destroyed." "Very well, we will send a ship to escort you in." Skenn hoped it wouldn't take long. The ship was venting oxygen now, and it wouldn't be too long before the atmosphere became unbreathable. He grabbed the environmental suit and started to climb into it, just in case he needed it. He looked out at the transparent hull in front of him and marveled at the sheer size of the Liberator. He'd seen dreadnoughts before, but they hadn't been quite the same size as this, nor had they been quite so impressive to look at. This wasn't just a war machine. It was a work of art as well. "Would you just look at that?" he admired quietly. He could see a small fighter approach before taking up a position in front of him. "Skenn, this is Lieutenant Sigurdsson. Please follow me back to beta hangar." "Acknowledged." Skenn started to follow the small fighter. The power was draining fast, but he should make it. He'd survived by the narrowest of margins, but he'd made it. Still, the hardest part was yet to come. Now, he had to make amends with the enemy. Chapter 8. Both Schafer and Void made their way to the holding cells. Neither of them had any cause to visit them so far, so this was the first time they had visited this part of the Titanic ship. The decor was more functional in this part of the ship. The colors were the same, but there were fewer trappings of comfort. They entered the prison complex and into the primary security station. Major Varma and Lieutenant Sigurdsson were already there, processing their new charge. "So this is the prison section." "Technically, the prison is through there, Captain," Major Varma pointed out, indicating the corridor opposite the security station. "It's divided into sections, and each section is kept offline when it isn't needed in order to save on the life support. And our guest? He's just down there on the left." "Did he give you any trouble?" Void queried. "None at all." In the corridor approaching the prison were a number of holding cells. Each one was equipped with physical bars made of the same material as the hull. They could also be made transparent in order to give the room a more open appearance without sacrificing the security. The rest of the furniture was purely functional, a bed and a toilet in a recess. They could tell which cell held Skenn, for it was the only one at full illumination at the moment. Moving towards it, they could see the occupant within. The man was not quite middle-aged, but he did wear his experience on his face, appearing both rugged and somewhat haunted at the same time. His hair was black and cut in the most functional way possible, as short as possible without the need for shaving. His build was athletic with a little muscle mass, but not enough to stand out in any way. Fit, but not noticeably so. He sat on the edge of the bed staring into space, deep in thought. "So, you must be Namor Skenn. You must be the person in charge. I am Captain Schafer. This is Commander Voight. Thank you for saving my life out there."
"Lucky for you we decided to jump through the gate," Voight pointed out.
"It seems luck was on my side this time," Skenn commented. "In the end, at least.
Going by the numbers of hunters you had after you, they really wanted you dead."
I won't be too surprised if Teel had some warships inbound, so you might want to be a bit wary."
"Are you that valuable to the Teel Corporation?"
"We'll find out, won't we?" Skenn responded. "I hope you have some backup nearby."
"We're not going to be sharing that kind of information with you," Schafer asserted.
"I assume so. If you have any sense, you would have."
"What is it that you know which is so valuable?"
"We'll get to that. Plenty of dirty secrets, though. More than enough to buy my way into the Republic."
"A little presumptive, aren't you?" Schafer responded, annoyed by Skenn's arrogance. "What makes you think I won't lock you away for the rest of your natural life?"
"It would be a waste. You might want to, but it's not a very practical resolution."
"We have enough evidence to link you to enough crimes to justify it."
"I'm not going to deny any of that. It's all true. The trouble is, there are complications that don't make it quite so black and white."
"Like what?"
"I can tell you, but you're simply not going to believe me. Better to just examine me and find out for yourself."
"What do you mean by that?"
"That's what this is all about, isn't it? Trust," Skenn indicated. "You don't trust me and have no reason to. You make the discoveries about me by yourself. You'll have more belief in them and, by extension, foster, if not trust, at least a little understanding between us."
"You can start by telling us everything you know."
"And I am happy to volunteer everything I know, but I do want some assurances."
"The way I see it, you're in no position to bargain. You barely made it to us alive."
"I'm not asking for a lot, Captain."
"From my point of view, you have to earn our trust first. Then we decide whether we bestow upon you our favor."
"Sir, if I may, there's no harm in listening to his proposal." "Thank you, Commander Voight, was it?"
Voight nodded in confirmation. "Okay then. Skenn, what is it you want?"
"I just want to be a citizen with all the normal protections a citizen of the Republic has," Skenn requested. "If that's a citizen behind bars, then so be it."
This made Schafer pause. He'd happily go to prison. Why would he defect if he thought he'd be imprisoned? "You'd agree to that?"
"It's not the scenario I'm hoping for, but yes," Skenn acknowledged. "I knew that this was going to be difficult, and that circumstances were probably not going to go well for me, but it was still better than the alternative."
"Which was?"
"Death, at best," Skenn shrugged. "Being tortured for the rest of my life, at worst."
"So you fell out with your boss?"
"That would be an understatement, but yes."
"Why?"
Voight interrupted. "That's the most important question for all of this, isn't it?" Skenn approved. "Turns out I committed the worst crime of all. I started thinking for myself."
"What did you disagree with him on? Did you start to grow a conscience?" Schafer questioned with disdain.
"Oh, it's much more literal than that, Captain."
Dr. Takuma entered the complex carrying a portable scanner.
"Captain, please wait," she protested. "You can't question him yet, not until I examine him."
"Doctor!"
"I don't want to hear it, Captain," Akari contested. "We pulled him out of combat. I need to examine him and make sure he's fit before he can do anything else. You know the rules as well as I do."
"He's not one of the crew."
"Doesn't matter. He's on the Liberator. He gets treated."
Schafer glowered at Akari, annoyed at being interrupted.
"You can stare at me all you like, Carl. It's not going to change my mind."
Skenn watched passively, but with some satisfaction at seeing the doctor give the captain a dressing down. Akari held up a scanner and pointed it at Skenn.
"Could you stand up, please?"
Skenn willingly complied.
"You two, Move over there a bit. You're getting in the way.
Schafer and Voight moved away from the cell to give the doctor a clear space. She activated the device, and within a second, it was done.
Kane, can you upload the scan data from the device into the medical repository?
Yes, Doctor. Akari pulled out a media pad and started navigating through the menus, searching for the scan results.
This is just an initial scan to check for injuries. We'll need to check your biochemistry as well, Akari explained. But it looks like you are clear of any internal injuries, although… Oh my.
What is it, Doctor?
Captain, this man has got so many implants in his skull, it's a wonder he's even conscious, Akari declared. And you've even had some removed recently. By the ancestors, someone's absolutely butchered your brain.
Akari continued analyzing the data.
Kane, can you access Mr. Skenn's implants at all?
There is an encrypted firewall preventing me from gaining access. I can release that, Skenn obliged. You won't be able to access any memory data or anything like that, but you should be able to access the implant interfaces. Thank you, Mr. Skenn, Kane answered. I can see most are running within regular operational parameters, but 2 of them are reporting critical failures. I recommend that these are removed as soon as possible. Are either related to my memory? No, Mr. Skenn. Good. The one that locks my memory from any network intrusion will kill me if it's removed, so please be careful with that one.
Captain, I need to get this man into surgery immediately.
Can't it wait until after the interrogation?
You heard Kane. The implants are on critical failures, which means they could fail at any time. If that happens during the middle of the interrogation, you'll only get half your information.
I won't get any if he dies on the operating table. Akari gave Schafer a stern glance.
There's no debating this, Carl. And that was a monstrous remark. I don't want to hear anything like that again. The doctor is correct, Captain, Voight challenged. The prisoner's health takes priority.
Fine. Get him to surgery, Schafer relented. Do what you need to do. Let me know when he's well enough to talk. Schafer and Voight left the detention block, leaving Akari to tend to the defector.
Captain.
Yes, Commander.
The doctor was right about that remark. That was uncalled for, she criticized. I know he was goading you somewhat, but it's no excuse.
Duly noted, Commander, Schafer dismissed. Schafer knew he encouraged his command staff to challenge him, but it was at these times that he felt maybe he was misguided in this. He made the comment without thinking, and yes, that was a mistake. But Skenn had succeeded in pushing his buttons. Whether that was deliberate or not, he wasn't sure, but it had gotten to him.
May I suggest we bring in the Resolute, Ren, and Lee Sun? We can sit with them on the other side of the gate in case Teel are sending a military response.
Good idea, Commander. I think our guest is exaggerating, but better safe than sorry. Chapter 9. When Skenn returned to consciousness, it felt different. He was very fuzzy-headed, possibly still chemically offset by sedatives, but his headache had finally rescinded. Not just reduced, but gone entirely. He hoped it was his natural state and not down to painkillers. There was also something else, something unquantifiable. It was like his body was waiting to react to something. But what? There was a sense of anticipation that wasn't there before, not without a threat present anyway. He wanted to retreat away, find a more secure space. It then occurred to him what this was. It was a feeling, an emotion he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. This wasn't just the self-preservation reflex, but the part of humanity that warned against a course of action. It was instinct that made a person avoid a punch, but it was the fear that made a person avoid the conflict to begin with. Skenn realized they had been operating on instinct for a very long time now. He hadn't felt this feeling for decades, and it disturbed him. He was in a bed in the medical bay and could see a number of other beds in close proximity, only one of the others occupied with someone who was sedated.
Good, you're awake.
Skenn noted it was the doctor again, and felt a little relieved. How am I?
That was going to be my question to you, Akari responded, smiling.
The pain in my head has gone completely, but I feel fine otherwise.
Except what? This part didn't come easily for Skenn. He rarely talked to other people for any reason beyond mission parameters, let alone relate his feelings to them. I feel afraid.
That's normal.
Doctor, I don't think I've ever felt like this before.
I'm not surprised. One of the implants we removed was regulating your emotions.
Regulating them? In what way?
Well, it wasn't suppressing any emotion entirely, as that would be disastrous, but it was suppressing some and amplifying others. Your fear was being suppressed, for example. Not entirely, but it was being reduced to a minimal level. Likewise, your feelings of happiness and contentment were being amplified, although I suspect that might have been done in conjunction with some form of behavioral modification, Akari explained.
That explains a few things, Skenn replied. I thought I was just conditioned to withstand fear.
That may still be true, but someone wanted to make damn sure you could.
I can answer the other two. I think the happiness was turned up so I enjoyed my work, perverse as that may sound.
And did you?
Yes. I took great satisfaction out of it. Does that shock you?
It shouldn't do, but it does.
Imagine living with it all your life, then finding out you might not be a monster after all.
How does it make you feel?
I suppose the civilized response would be to feel relieved.
And do you?
No, not really. I feel confused, I suppose would be the right word. Maybe ambivalent.
Well, I suppose I should thank you for being honest with me.
I thought about it, but if I lie about this, how can you trust me when I tell you what I have locked up in here? Skenn explained, tapping his forehead. What was the other implant?
It was regulating adrenal responses.
Boosting them when I needed them, suppressing them when I didn't.
In summary, yes.
What about all the others? I know some are designed to boost my reaction times, and I know others are combat enhancers, but I don't know everything they crammed into my head.
That's going to take some time to determine, I'm afraid. You're pretty messed up in there, and it's going to take some sorting out. I dare say you've not been your true self your whole adult life.
Does this mean I'm responsible for my actions or not?
I don't know, to be honest, Akari answered. I don't know if it absolves you, but it may provide some mitigating factors.
That may help my case, then.
Maybe, but don't count on it, Akari stated. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is that skull fracture you have, or rather had. It's healed up now, but it wasn't that long ago.
That's what started this whole series of events, Skenn hinted. Got beaten unconscious by someone I was hunting. They surprised me and clubbed me round the head so hard I didn't come to for hours. Happens to the best of us.
How did that start off the problems with your implants?
Imagine, Doctor, having an implant inside your head that prevented you from making certain decisions. Every time you think of what you want to do, your mind clouds and your train of thought becomes harder and harder to hold on to. No matter how hard you want to pursue a certain course of action, you can't. It just falls apart in your mind, Skenn described. You do the only course of action that's left, because it's the only thing you can do to move on.
So you were effectively controlled?
In a way, yes, Skenn responded. Now that fractured my skull somehow managed to damage it. For the first time I can remember, I can finally form a cogent thought of my own without it dissolving into mush. The damage didn't give me autonomy, but it allowed me to work against it.
This is why you decided to defect.
That came later, but yes.
Now you want them all out.
Not all of them. Some still have their uses. I know there's one that switches off pain responses when I need to. That one can stay, and the one that enhances my reflexes, Skenn considered. But I want everything that controls my behavior gone, even that one that acts as a firewall between my brain and a network. If you can get it out without killing me, then do so.
I think we're going to have to go through each one in turn, review it, whether you want to keep it or not, then remove it individually.
I want them gone as soon as possible.
We'll have to do them one at a time, Mr. Skenn. Neural interfacing is delicate work, and doing them one at a time is the best way to reduce any potential harm, Akari pointed out. And your brain has suffered a significant amount of trauma already.
It will be worth it to be free of him.
Who?
Teel, Skenn revealed.
It was at his request that you had all the implants put in.
Skenn acknowledged.
Captain Schafer still wants to interrogate you at the earliest opportunity, Akari stated. I think you need time to recover. A few weeks bare minimum. It will give us some time to do a more detailed assessment of your mental state as well.
If it's all the same to you, Doctor, I'd rather get this done as soon as possible myself, Skenn dissuaded. I just want a bit of sleep first.
If you're sure you're up to it.
I just have one request.
What's that?
I'd like you to be there as well.
I was going to insist anyway, as I want to monitor your condition during the sessions.
I was more concerned with getting all emotional at weird times. I'd rather have someone around who understands what is going on. It might prevent any possible misinterpretation.
I can assure you I will be there, Mr. Skenn.
Thank you, Doctor, Skenn responded. I haven't seen too many acts of kindness, and even fewer that didn't have some form of vested interest, so it is appreciated.
I do this for everyone, Akari added. This doesn't make you special.
That just makes it better, Skenn mused. But I don't think your other patients scare you quite like I do.
Does my fear excite you then? Akari questioned, trying to cover up her fear with bravado.
Not really. I'm just used to seeing it, Skenn reflected. If anything, it just makes me feel numb.
Good, Akari sighed. And I am scared because you are my polar opposite. You are my nemesis, professionally speaking.
And that is why I am grateful. You have every right to resent me for what I am, and you have every right to treat me with utter disdain. Yet you do not.
I couldn't do that any more than you could fight against that implant, Akari explained. I should resent you, but I see what they've done to you, and I can't help but feel some sympathy.
Let's see if I'm deserving of it. Chapter 10. For the interrogation, Skenn found himself in a rather comfortable conference room. It was located near the core of the ship, and from what he could gather, it was part of a suite that was used by everyone. He had expected to be locked in a secure location for the interrogation, but this was more pleasant. Someone entered carrying a cup of coffee and placed it in front of him. He thanked them and took a sip. It was surprisingly flavoursome for a drink served on a military vessel. He'd had a lot better, but still good. Had it been a Teel vessel, it would have almost certainly been a generic brown liquid with only a vague passing resemblance to coffee. Still, despite this convivial approach, he still had a retinue of guards stationed outside of the room, and one inside, sat at the other end of the table, watching him. The door opened and in walked Captain Schafer, Commander Voigt, and Dr. Takuma, and took up seats on the opposite side of the table. As he looked at the doctor, he instinctively checked the wrap that she had placed on his head to protect the areas affected by the surgery. It was just there to protect the vulnerable areas, but it had been designed so that he could rest his head while sleeping without causing any discomfort. It looked a little ridiculous, sure, but it wasn't designed to be fashionable.
Kane, can you start recording the session? Full AV. Certainly, Captain. Interrogation of Namor Skenn. Teel Corporation defector. Lycera system, Schafer announced. Please timestamp, Kane.
How are you feeling, Mr. Skenn? Voigt asked. Are you sufficiently rested?
Yes, thank you, Commander, Skenn answered. I must say, this is all much more pleasant than I'd expected.
This may be interrogation, but there's no need to be uncivilized about it, Voigt replied. You've been willing to cooperate every step of the way, and have not given us any cause for a more secure environment. So here we are.
First of all, thank you for agreeing to do this, and not dragging the process out, Schafer conceded.
I want to get it done as much as you do, Captain.
Before we get on to the questioning, can we establish your identity, please?
I am Namor Skenn, agent of the Teel Corporation, and I have been operating as an assassin and covert agent for the corporation for over 6 metric months.
What's that in Triskel years, Kane?
Over 20 Triskel years, Captain.
That's a long time to be operating in such a dangerous profession, Schafer commented.
It is. I've operated mostly in human territory, but I have operated among xenocultures as well.
Metric date of birth?
Truthfully, I don't know. I know I am 1.1 to 1.2 metric years old, but I can't be more specific than that.
Home planet?
Saren, Skenn revealed. I know that for sure.
Any indexed individual identification number?
If I had one, it's long forgotten, Skenn shrugged. I'm so used to fake identities that my own seems a little vague.
Okay then. So during this time, how many deaths would you say you've been responsible for?
A few hundred. I don't recall offhand, but my ship will have logs that can corroborate names and times. I think the main core survived, so that should be possible to retrieve.
You don't know the number?
Commander, after a while they start to blur together, Skenn protested. You only tend to remember the ones that stand out. Someone who stares you in the eyes and dies defiantly, or someone who tries to run away from you, only to be killed by traffic. You remember them. You don't remember the people you shot from a distance.
Does life mean so little to you?
It's a cruel universe, Commander, and I've seen parts of it you can't imagine, Skenn retorted with subdued anger. There's no limit to the cruelty humanity can inflict upon their brethren. I know I am no angel, but there's a lot worse than me out there.
So, after so much time in the service of the Teel Corporation, what made you decide to defect to the Republic? Schafer interjected.
I've mentioned this to the doctor there, but I will go through it again for the record, Skenn explained. As you are aware, I have quite a few implants in my head. The doctor's scan confirmed that.
I will link the medical records to this interrogation for context,
Akari stated. Well, not so long ago, I was hunting down a fugitive in Jujinkai space. He'd put quite some space between himself and Teel space, but not so far that I couldn't find him. However, when I caught up with him, he managed to surprise me and clubbed me unconscious, Skenn detailed. This had an unexpected effect. The blow damaged one of my implants.
And what effect did this have?
The implant itself prevented me from forming any thoughts that might act contrary to the edicts of the Teel Corporation. This meant I could not hold any thoughts of disobedience or defiance, or any thoughts of active rebellion, Skenn summarized. Once this was damaged, I found myself able to hold onto those thoughts for a little bit longer, and, over time, I was able to exert some defiance. Not overt, of course, as that would have been detected and resulted in me becoming the next target on the list.
This implant was controlling your mind?
In a way, yes. It was more a matter of having a clear path than a hazy fog. It steered you down a certain path, rather than state outright what you should be doing. Skenn tried to explain the exact nature of the implant, but found it difficult. But once I was able to start thinking a bit more clearly, I decided I wanted to think for myself. I couldn't get the implant removed immediately. Again, that would have been detected. I had to spend a long time training myself to work against it, to reduce the hold it had over me. It gave me time to prepare as well. I was able to move money around freely and plan my course of action. No one thought to check the accounts, as no one thought I was capable of subterfuge against the Corp.
You eventually had that implant removed then?
Yes. As soon as I did that, it set off alerts. I was a fugitive from that moment on. If I was recaptured, it would have been re-implanted. But, to be honest, termination was far more likely. Teel isn't one for second chances, and I just proved the technology fallible, Skenn answered. By that point, I had already decided to defect to the Republic.
Why the Republic? Why us? Schafer probed. Why not one of the other corporations?
Firstly, anyone else would have got what they needed from me and then had me killed.
The Republic is the one human territory that has stood a chance in, Skenn reasoned. Secondly, if there's one thing being enslaved to a neural chip does to you, it makes you appreciate freedom. The Republic claimed to champion this, and, whilst I'm not naive enough to take this at face value, it did factor into my considerations. You respect freedom and liberty? Even killers dream of freedom, Captain, Skenn dryly observed. We even have higher ideals. But something went wrong, as you were under assault when we found you. After I communicated with the Senate, my presence was detected, and they all converged on my presence. Just bad luck, really. The doctor then had to remove 2 more implants before he could attend this session. They were close to failure. More bad luck, I'm afraid. It might have been a cascade caused by the removal of other implants. I've had a few removed lately, and not all of the procedures have been done by surgeons as skilled as your doctor.
That was Dr. Exotic Nur, actually.
So, we have the reason for your defection, but we only have your word that you've had an implant that effectively controlled your mind. Well, I couldn't exactly bring it with me, but your doctor will confirm the implants I have and had.
I can confirm it definitely, Mr. Skenn, but everything in his head is consistent with what he claims. There's definitely evidence for it, but not conclusive proof, Akari modified. But the implants we took out are definitely behavioral modifiers, so we can conclusively prove that some mental manipulation has been going on.
Schafer rumbled. He didn't want to give this assassin any excuse for his behavior, and this sounded dangerously close to it.
And you want to join the Republic because you want to be free of being controlled, Voight concluded, succinctly.
Correct.
Are you willing to share all the information you have?
Also correct.
And what information do you have?
Providing the data is still on my ship's core, I can give you the data on all the missions I've been on, who I killed, the reason why, and who gave the order. There's a few Republicans in the list, and I know a few you wrote off as accidents, but that's just cursory data. Skenn enticed. What you want to know are the names of spies and other operatives, inner workings of Teel intelligence, and so on. It won't be everything, as I am just one agent, and what agency would let a single agent know too much? Still, what I do know is valuable enough.
Like?
A good start is with Senator Nestor. He's a Teel spy. No, he can't be, Schafer protested. He's been part of the Senate since the beginning. He is most definitely a spy for the Teel Corporation. I know this because I was the one who turned him. War hero and champion of justice he may be, but... You're accusing Senator Nestor of... Accuse? No. I have proof on my ship's computer core, Skenn added. Blackmail was the first stage, but he gets paid for his services as well. You don't have to believe me. Just do what they did in the ancient democracies and follow the money. I can't believe Nestor of all people. Schafer shook his head. To Schafer, Nestor had been a paragon of the Republic, a shining light that inspired others. Now this turned out to be a lie. One thing I've always found, the more pure and wholesome the image, the more corrupt and depraved the reality, Skenn posited. If you can't see the flaws, that just means they've done a good job hiding them.
Cynical, aren't you?
Voight observed. If you're not cynical, you're not paying attention.
Captain.
They'll have to investigate. Any charges leveled do have to be investigated, even if there's no evidence. It's the only way to prove or disapprove the allegations.
What about the damage to his reputation? An accusation like this will destroy his career, even if proven false.
It'll have to be done quietly. If it turns out to be true, then we'll have to go public.
It'll damage the democratic institution.
But if it's covered up and he's allowed to fall on his sword, so to speak, it'll do far more damage should it come out. And it will. These things have a habit of getting out, Schafer evaluated. We have to adhere to the principles of the Republic. Damage to the institution is inevitable, but as long as we adhere to the core principles, it will not collapse.
It's either way, Voight concluded.
The only thing we can do is sell it on the principle of maintaining security.
Schafer hung his head. This was not good for their still relatively new democracy. Still, better to know of the threat than not. He is probably not the only one, Skenn warned. I wasn't the only agent tasked with this.
Do you know of any others?
There are others at a lower level that I know of. There's a few in the military, mostly those in useful positions like intelligence, a couple in the civilian sector as well.
You'll give us all the names?
All the ones I know of, yes,
Skenn offered.
But like I say, this is probably just a fraction.
Do you have anything that can help us identify others?
I can analyze the patterns of suspected individuals and point out behaviors that might indicate they have been turned. But again, it's not definitive.
You say you've killed a number of Republic personnel, Voight added.
Yes, I think the most high-profile of those would be Senator Lamenta.
That wasn't an accident, then?
Teel Intelligence identified her as a potential target, but she turned out to be more principled than the analysts thought. I had to think creatively, and I felt getting trampled by her own livestock seemed a good way of dealing with it, though she was dead before I managed to achieve that. I remember that one because, well, she was one of those that went fighting me all the way. Quite admired that.
You seem proud of all this, Voight noted.
I know I must seem abhorrent to you, Commander, but I have been manipulated and controlled my whole life. I feel what they want me to feel. Am I proud of what I've done? Yes, but I don't even know if that's me or them, Skenn explained, keeping calm. But there was an underlying anger in his voice. Only now am I starting to feel my natural emotions.
The implant I removed last cycle was one that controls behavior. Certain emotions were being influenced, if not outright controlled. Emotions like fear, shame, guilt were heavily suppressed, and others like rage and happiness were being amplified, depending on the situations, Akari defended. It's like the implants were used to control certain personality disorders, but turned for more sinister purposes. Mr. Skenn has not been in control of his emotions since it was attached to his brain.
This doesn't change what you've done. You still have to take responsibility for your actions.
No, it doesn't change anything. I know that. The past cannot be undone, but I want to be my own man, not to be some compliant drone.
Do you think you can redeem yourself by working for the Republic?
I don't know if I can change, but I do want the chance to be able to make my own decisions, my own mistakes, Skenn revealed. All I want to be is myself, whatever form that takes.
And what if you can't?
At least it'll be my decision, not Teel's, Skenn resolved. Either way, you still get my knowledge and skills, and I get my freedom. I am willing to commit myself to the Republic to achieve this.
But do you believe in what the Republic stands for?
Belief is such a nebulous term, Captain. I'm still figuring these things out myself. What I want, how I feel, what I believe. The one thing I am sure of is that I want to be free. If this is what the Republic stands for, then yes.
Schafer mused over this. Could such a man believe in such ideals? He still loathed the man for what he was, and this was an individual steeped in deception and subterfuge. Did he deserve a second chance?
I think we should leave it there for the time being, Schafer decided. We need to consult the Senate on the best course of action going forward. Mr. Skenn, I will require you to assist Lieutenant Commander Nadiro in retrieving the data from the ship. Major Varma will also be there to keep an eye on you.
Schafer, Voight, and Akari stood and left the room, leaving Skenn to await the guards.
What do you make of his story?
Schafer asked. We have to establish its veracity first. I believe he is being truthful, at least from his perspective, Akari judged. It all stands up from a medical standpoint. He seems genuine, Voight added. He's not trying to shy away from the more unpleasant aspects. I think we can do a deal with him. At the same time, we're going to have to watch him very closely. We're doing a deal here, not establishing trust.
I have to admit that I am reticent, but I am realistic enough to appreciate the security value. If what he says about Senator Nestor is true, and I hate the thought that it might be, then we will have plugged a major breach in our security.
So what will you recommend to the Senate?
Deal. But we're going to have to do something to keep an eye on him. Chapter 11. Schafer and Voight had returned to the command center and requested a priority communication to Triskel, routing it through the conference room. The Republic logo was displayed on the wall until the call was answered by Admiral Wells.
Hello again, Carl. Have you been able to interrogate our defect yet?
We've just concluded the first session.
What is your assessment, then? Can we trust him?
Trust? Absolutely not. I think we can make a deal with him, though.
Has he offered you any information yet?
Yes.
Is it reliable?
That remains to be seen, Admiral, Schafer added. He's made some serious allegations, and I think we need to be careful how we approach this.
In what sense?
If his claims are true, we have a serious security breach, Schafer alluded. One of the most senior senators may have been compromised.
Who?
Gerard Nestor. Admiral Wells fell silent for a moment.
That is grave news, she finally spoke. Does he have any evidence for this?
He says he has. We've started going through his ship's computer core to gain access to his evidence, but it may take some time to collate it all together, Schafer explained. But the allegations are even worse than that.
How?
Skenn was able to blackmail him with evidence that he was engaged in...
Nestor? That can't be true.
We're on the verge of finding out, Schafer assured. There's also claims that he'd been receiving payments from the Teel Corporation. We should be able to determine that with a thorough audit.
If true, it's going to be quite a blow to the Senate, for one of the founding fathers to be disgraced in such a way.
I know. It's appalling.
Do you give these accusations any credence, Captain?
Not yet. That will change if we discover this evidence, Schafer answered. I don't want to believe it, but the evidence will speak for itself.
What about you, Commander? What I think doesn't matter, only what we can prove, Voight assessed. At the moment, it's just an accusation. If we obtain the evidence from Skenn's ship, then we have enough to investigate further. Frankly, the blackmail material alone is enough. If Senator Nestor has been taking part in these sordid practices, we owe it to the victims to take action. It's going to be an almighty scandal. I don't think we can avoid that either way, Voight observed. I think the best we can hope for is that Skenn turns out to be a fraud. But I have a sneaking suspicion that he may be correct. So you believe him? I wouldn't trust him one iota, but something tells me he may be telling the truth about this, Voight revealed. But this is a tightrope we're walking. We can't take this at face value because it could easily be psychological warfare or some kind of reputational sabotage. But we can't afford to ignore it either, both for the crime and the security violation. We're going to have to tread carefully with this, Admiral Wells stated. We'll see what evidence he provides us with, and then we'll go from there. From what he has to say, I suspect there are going to be many interrogation sessions. And I'm sure you have the people to achieve this, but I'm going to be sending out a small intelligence team to meet you on Gilladron.
You're not going to be taking him to Triskel?
The intelligence team can do the same job on board the Liberator, Wells determined. Frankly, considering his reputation, I'd rather keep him in a secure environment like the Liberator.
You don't think the prison is secure enough?
No, and for two reasons, Wells explained. Firstly, there's every chance he'll get assassinated in a prison, and secondly, we want to put his talents to use.
But there's no way we can trust him in the field.
No, but there is a way he can build some trust, and therefore earn his citizenship.
I don't like where this is going.
I know what you're going to say, Carl, but he is an asset, and we can use him.
But he's going to be a security risk if he stays here.
Then don't give him the run of the ship. Give him very limited access and let him earn his access to certain areas. Don't let him near any sensitive areas, Wells instructed. Kane can keep him monitored at all times.
He's a risk I'd rather not have on board, especially not his crew.
Captain, the Liberator is one of the most secure places in the Republic. The Senate doesn't have the security systems you do, Wells countered. Besides, the Security Council has already debated this and voted for it.
And that's their final word on the matter?
It is. Part of the deal is that he offers his services to us and that he stays under your jurisdiction until such point we deem him no longer to be a security risk. When you feel he has earned it, he will be granted citizenship.
What if he doesn't agree to that?
Those are the terms. If he doesn't agree to them, then we will imprison him, Wells defined. But the analysts we had pore over his communications suggest that he will be realistic about the situation. He seemed receptive to the concept of working for us, Voight pointed out. He has to have anticipated that we are going to set conditions like that. He seems to know his worth, but also his risk. Captain, do you concur?
Yes, I think he will agree to the terms, Schafer reluctantly affirmed. I think he will be a problem, though. I suspect he will be insubordinate at the very least.
If he steps out of line, then he will be punished.
That will almost certainly be the case, Schafer promised.
Good. Have there been any signs of Teel Corporation activity along the border?
We haven't detected any activity as of yet. Our guess may be valuable to them, but I think he was overselling himself, Schafer assumed. I was going to give it another cycle, then proceed on to Geladron.
Okay. We're going to redeploy the Resolute in the Lyson, but the Wren will stay with you until you move on.
Acknowledged. We will send you all of our documentation of the subject immediately and keep you updated with the evidence search.
If you would. If we're going to launch an investigation into the Senator, I'd like to have as much evidence as possible.
I'll keep you updated. Schafer out.
The communication ended, returning to the Republic logo. Schafer was not pleased with the thought of having to babysit this defector, especially one whose very existence he loathed.
Why did they have to saddle us with him?
I don't like it either, sir, but we have to play with the cards we've been dealt.
One thing's for sure. I'm going to set a high bar for him before I judge him fit for citizenship.
Chapter 12. Hannah Ilyas was engaged in assigning tasks to subordinates when the captain caught her attention.
Hannah, can I speak to you for a moment?
She assigned the current task to an individual and then made her excuses. She joined Captain Schafer in the main meeting room in the command center.
What is it, sir?
I would like to request your assistance to try and determine the honesty of this Teel defector.
I'm restricted by law to intentionally focus scan individuals. It doesn't cover surface thoughts or general mental static, but it does forbid us from performing sustained scans of people.
Schafer noted how practiced the words came out. It was obvious this was a line she had spoken many times.
I know, Hannah, but there are exceptions,
Schafer acknowledged, and one of them is military security. If I feel an individual represents an immediate threat to the security of the ship, then I can employ the use of a telepath.
Yes, sir, Hannah confirmed. Do you think this defector represents a threat to the ship?
I have my suspicions, but he's been cooperative so far. But I can't preclude the theory that it's all an elaborate ploy to set himself up in a position of trust, Schafer admitted. Deception and manipulation are standard tools for those, enmeshed in covert operations after all.
Do you think the threat is immediate?
Given his reported capability, certainly.
Then we have grounds for the scan, Hannah answered.
So you'll do it?
With your authority? Yes, sir.
Good. What is your workload like? Are you available now?
I'll just notify Lieutenant Moritsu. He can step in for me.
Excellent. Now I know proximity is an issue, so let us proceed to detention. They left the meeting room, pausing only for Hannah to delegate responsibility to her second-in-command. They made their way to the elevator and prompted it to travel to the prison complex. The elevator, or Parkwam to use its official designation, traveled like a standard elevator, but in 3 dimensions. It was limited to certain routes by tracks, but it can move in any axis, which allowed for transportation to any available docking station on the ship. The walls on the elevator had positions for occupants to stand or sit in. This was less for comfort and more for offsetting the inertia. Whilst most of the inertia was dampened, There was still some left, so the positions just kept people from bumping into each other during that initial shunt or the sudden deceleration.
We'll need another witness, Hannah commented.
Who would you feel most comfortable with?
The commander, definitely.
The speed of the reply demonstrated a strong and clear preference. Commander, would you meet me in detention, please? Commander Voight acknowledged. I appreciate you agreeing to this, Hannah.
I'm used to it, Hannah replied. Captains can't resist the tactical advantages it provides.
The best weapons are always subtle ones. Planning, logistics, communications, intelligence, and telepathy, Schafer exhorted.
You're the first captain I've served under that has grouped those together. Thank you.
Thank you for what?
For not treating telepathy separately, like it was something weird and unnatural. Some people can't help themselves and make it sound like some kind of witchcraft. But you just lumped it into the toolbox.
Schafer smiled at the analogy. I didn't intend to be quite so inelegant. I just intended to state I perceive it as something undervalued as a component of military strategy.
The implication is appreciated anyway, Hannah smiled back. And thank you for asking for my help discreetly.
That's more to do with the Commander Voight. She did warn me not to ask you openly. Hannah laughed. It took a while to traverse the distance and a few changes of axis, but they reached their destination with rapidity. They strode into the prison complex and approached the guard manning the security station. Is the office available? Schafer asked.
Yes, sir.
They entered the office and sat down by the desk on opposing sides. The holding cells started just to the other side of the wall, so they were now in close proximity of Namor Skenn, without him being aware of it. A few moments later, the door opened and Voight entered.
I think I can work out what's going on here, Voight observed.
Do you have any objections, Commander?
No, sir, Voight responded. Would do the same myself.
So what do we do now? Schafer asked.
You two do nothing. I do the scan and provide a running commentary.
So we don't do anything?
You're essentially to keep an eye on me and make sure I don't make anyone's head explode. The law is big on paranoia and vague to specifics, Hannah added with a degree of sarcasm.
You're not going to project any thoughts into my head or anything like that?
Sorry, Captain. That would be illegal. You sound almost disappointed, sir, Voight joked.
I just don't like not knowing what's happening.
Don't worry, sir. I'll be doing my best to relate what I see.
I'd rather see for myself, Schafer sulked.
That's what most people get wrong about telepathy, Captain. It's not like seeing or hearing at all. It's more like dreaming than anything, Hannah described. The mind is a surreal and incongruous landscape, and quite unlike any of the other senses. If you're not used to it, it can be quite disturbing. I imagine Mr. Skenn's thoughts will be quite disturbing, so be careful, Voight advised. You can never tell with people, Commander. What looks calm and collected on the outside could be chaos on the inside, Hannah explained. You have to be careful with every living thing with a brainstem.
If there's anything in there that looks like a threat, pull out immediately, Schafer added.
I will, Captain.
The room fell into silence as Hannah closed her eyes and concentrated. To Schafer and Voight, it looked like very little was happening, but to Hannah, she was focusing inward, pushing the other senses to one side to reach out with her mind. The latent static that always bubbled in her mind grew into a roar as everything nearby crashed into each other. Each mind was a radio broadcasting noise.
I can sense the thoughts of everyone nearby, Hannah explained. Both of you are easily discernible. The guards outside I can isolate. I'm searching for the cell's occupant.
This is why you need to be close.
Yes. The closer someone is, the more easily discernible they are against the general static. Now shush. Questions are distractions.
She could sense the mind in question and reached out toward it. Even before their consciousness touched, she could sense something was wrong. The stream of consciousness was being interrupted in a way that she hadn't experienced before. She experienced something akin to it before in the minds of those with serious mental disorders, but this was less of a wavering path and more one that was there one moment and not the next, only to reappear again.
Oh, this Mr. Skenn is not in good shape. mentally speaking, she described. His mind's fractured in a way I've not seen before.
In what way?
Shh, Hannah warned. He's missing parts of his consciousness. Some of his memories are gone, and he has some implants that seem to be overriding his own thoughts. The poor man. It's such a mess in there.
Schafer started to say something, but Hannah immediately held her finger up, and he stayed silent. Hannah started getting impressions from his memories. They weren't visual in nature, but emotive, at least to begin with. Form and images started to enter the frame, and she could start stitching the elements together. Some of the memories were horrible, acts of murder and carnage carried out with a sense of pleasure and accomplishment. This was disturbing on its own, but it was what was absent that she found more perturbing. No empathy or remorse, any kind of emotion associated with guilt. There were some flickers of this in some memories, but they were so subdued as to be insubstantial. This was indicative of a true sociopath, but there was something that seemed manufactured about it. His emotions don't seem right. I mean, they're sociopathic and all rather disconcerting and creepy, but it doesn't feel like an organic extension of his personality. She found herself looking out of his eyes at Dr. Takuma, listening to a conversation about his implants. She followed the mental trail and found them, along with gaps where others had been. There we go. That's why. He had implants influencing his behavior. Obscene, Hannah continued. His emotions are all raw and vivid at the moment. I don't think he's used to experiencing them. He's so confused and frightened. There was also something she wasn't expecting. Deep within his mind, there was a young child crying. Hannah found that the realm of the subconscious mind was often heavy on the symbolism and light on the subtlety. So this was obviously his younger self. Is this how you see yourself? Hannah whispered. Do you see yourself as an innocent party? This was a gambit on her part. She could be an observer in someone's mind, and they might never be any wiser. However, as soon as any interaction begins, that person becomes aware of the intruder's consciousness. It might take a little while for them to recognize it, but eventually, even the most dull-witted individual could realize. I know how it must look, but I was never a boy. Namor's dismembered voice rang out in his mindscape, and I didn't realize the Liberator had a telepath. You recognize what I am? I've had telepaths in my head before. It's not a new sensation to me. I'm not going to hurt you in any way. I would hope not, but I know why you're here. Skenn's consciousness subsided. Have a look for yourself. I have nothing to hide. Just be gentle. You telepaths can be a bit rough. Hannah could sense he was being as honest and open as he could be. He attempted to hide nothing from her, and there's plenty she felt he should hide. There was lots of blood on his hands and a lot of heinous acts committed by him. Allah, if I'd committed acts like this, I would not be so willing to reveal them. I know I am a monster, but I am a monster that has been engineered. Is that why you see yourself as a child? Do you long for your lost innocence? Don't test me with your cheap psychology, Skenn chided. Have a look around, telepath without a name. Do you see anything resembling a childhood? Hannah realized that she had not been seeing anything beyond the child image that might indicate any childhood. I was never innocent, and I was born with murder in mind, Skenn revealed. Hannah realized what he was implying. Do you want to expand beyond that? To be something beyond what they made you to be? I want autonomy, Skenn explained. Tell Captain Schafer what you see in me. Full disclosure. I want him to understand that I am hiding nothing. Hannah opened her eyes. Hannah, are you okay? Voight asked. He's a violent, conflicted man, Hannah surmised, but he is being truthful, as far as he knows it, at least. Schafer seemed almost disappointed. No deception at all. I'm not sensing any, Hannah added,
but he's not got a conventional psychology. He's a cold-blooded killer on one side, but there's also something quite childlike about him, something that's seeing the universe in a new way.
Childlike? Voight responded with incredulity.
In a way, it's like a new side of him that didn't exist previously, even recently. I don't think he ever had a choice before.
So both you and Dr. Takuma seem to think he's not entirely responsible for his actions.
What I saw in there, no. I'm not saying he's innocent. Far from it. He is still a very dangerous man. But I do think there are mitigating circumstances and that he is genuine about his intentions.
Schafer mused over this. This was the second testimony he had, giving credence to the idea that Namor Skenn might not be the threat he envisioned. Nonetheless, even with this testimony, he was not going to give the defector an easy time. Do you believe him to be a threat to the security of the Liberator?
Potentially, yes, Hannah admitted, but his willingness should make it manageable.
If needed to, do you think we could pull the information we require from his mind?
Sir, you know that wouldn't be admissible in any court of law.
I know, but we need to as a last resort. Can you do it?
Possibly. I can't say for sure. It's an unreliable process at the best of times, let alone with a fractured mind.
Okay. Well, we don't do that unless absolutely necessary, Schafer decided.
If we are to be his keepers, we might as well let him out of confinement. Give him limited access to the ship, living quarters and recreational facilities only, Voight suggested. We keep him confined. He won't be so receptive forever.
Agreed, but I want him under constant surveillance, Schafer nodded. Kane.
Yes, Captain.
Can you keep Mr. Skenn under observation at all times?
Yes, sir.
If he takes one step into any region designated secure, I want a security team on him before he gets to make it to the second step. Any violation involving Mr. Skenn, I want to be notified immediately.
Would you like me to inform you as well, Commander?
Yes, please.
Hannah, just one last thing.
What is it, Captain?
Is there anything you can do to secure Mr. Skenn?
It doesn't quite work like that. Despite what the general population thinks, we can't really control minds. We can interact, but we can't force. Not that I would even if I had the capability.
Point taken, Schafer conceded. Okay then, I think we're done here. Thank you for your assistance, Hannah.
No problem, sir.
The trio got up to leave the office and walked through, acknowledging the guard on the way. They hadn't quite exited when they heard a voice coming from the holding cells.
Captain, could I have a quick word with the telepath?
Namor Skenn could not see them from where he was, as the cells were facing each other and a door with a privacy filter stood between them. The privacy filter was to prevent the inmates from being able to view the security station or its environs, so it seems he had heard the footsteps and deduced what was happening. Hannah looked towards the captain. It's up to you if you want to interact with him. She wondered about it for a moment. She felt pity for the man, but also fear. He had been manipulated and tormented, sure, but this didn't detract from the horrors she saw within his mind, horrors he had committed. With trepidation, she opened the door to the holding cells and confronted him. Thank you, he welcomed. I'm sorry for violating you like that. Don't worry, I expected it. Your presence was just a bit of a surprise is all, Skenn responded. But I did want to ask a favor of you. A favor? Nothing sinister. I would just like to talk to you on occasion, Skenn asked. I want your help to make sense of what's in my mind. I'm not a psychologist, I'm afraid. I'm not after a psychologist. They only offer professional opinions derived from research and previous cases, Skenn opined. They offer analysis based on something they can't see or experience for themselves. You can. I wouldn't know where to start, Hannah revealed. It's a tangled web in there. That's one way to put it, Skenn derided. But I'd rather just have someone to talk to who's experienced it. I don't know.
I'll see what I can do.
I would appreciate it if you could spare the time.
I have to get back now.
Skenn nodded. Before you go, what's your name, telepath?
Hannah.
Skenn nodded again as Hannah turned to leave.
Chapter 13. Schafer was enjoying a small meal at an open restaurant in the dining atrium when he was notified by one of the command center staff. Captain, sorry to interrupt, but we have potential hostiles in the system. With a sigh at the inevitability of his eating being interrupted, he responded, On my way. He wasn't far from the command center. The nearby Parkwam docking station would take him there within a few seconds. He made his way there and specified his destination. Upon his arrival at the command center, he strode up the corridor and into the main chamber. Report, Schafer barked.
6 hostiles have entered the Circum Gateway, sir, Voight replied. All Teel ships, 2 battleships, 2 cruisers, and 2 frigates.
Status of the Wren?
It's on the other side of the gate still. I've requested for reinforcements. The Lyson and Resolute are not too far away, but the Challenger, Obama, and the Mickelson are inbound.
What are their classes?
1 Invincible-class battleship, 1 Ardent-class heavy cruiser, and a Vindicator-class cruiser.
Should be more than enough, Schafer judged, providing they get here in time.
Enemies are 2 Predator-class battleships, 2 Sabre-class cruisers, and 2 Lance-class frigates.
Formidable, but not overwhelming, Schafer considered. Bring us about to their trajectory. Let's minimize our profile to them. Ready all weapons.
Shall we scramble fighters, sir?
Not yet. From what I remember, none of those classes have a fighter complement, so I don't think our fighters will have much use in this engagement.
They are currently sliding towards our position, Captain.
Inform Captain Mbeke of the Wren. Request they jump in on our indication, Schafer ordered. We don't want to show them our hand too early.
They will try to surround us, but without exposing themselves too much, Voight projected. Probably split into 2 groups for separate flanks on different axes. Draw our fire across a wide arc in a single plane.
Yes, they'll want to overload one side, Schafer agreed. That's the smart move. Get the nanoswarm to track their trajectory. The more damage it absorbs, the less we do.
Suggest focus fire on one of the battleships. Try and take it down as quickly as possible. Wren should concentrate on the cruisers when it jumps in, Voight formulated.
Agreed, Schafer nodded. Hannah.
On it, sir.
The Teel fleet dropped out of the slide in close proximity to the Liberator. The fleet was quite deadly, but Schafer was confident. The Liberator was significantly more powerful than any of the individual Teel ships, and with the Wren and the incoming ships, they could easily overpower this fleet. Schafer's main concern was terminating this engagement as quickly as possible and preventing as much loss of life as possible. He may be confident of ultimate success, but the battle could still be costly. Now let's see why they've been so brazen.
Incoming transmission.
Put it on screen. The fleet's leader appeared on the screen, a stern-looking man of advancing years. He didn't project a welcoming presence. This is Captain Ezer of the TCM Prosecutor. You will hand over the fugitive, Namor Skenn, and depart the system immediately. Schafer raised an eyebrow. Maybe Skenn wasn't overselling himself. No, you do not get to make demands here. You have violated Republic space. Withdraw now, or we will be forced to defend ourselves, Schafer determined. There will be no further warnings. The 2 captains sized each other up across the transmission. Schafer could see the opposing captain had already made his mind up, his expression steely and focused. He knew at that moment this was going to happen. There would not be any peaceful resolution. The communication was cut off. There was nothing more that needed to be said. Both captains knew what was going to happen. Open fire! All weapons! Target the Prosecutor as primary target, Schafer commanded. Signal the Wren! There were no qualms about the order. The command officers on the deck knew their enemy, and they knew this was always the most likely outcome.
Namor Skenn appears to be more valuable than we thought, Voight commented.
Sadly, for the people who are about to die. The Liberator opened up, launching a massive salvo towards the TCM Prosecutor. At the same time, the fleet fired upon the Liberator. Within a few seconds, massive damage was inflicted upon both the Prosecutor and the Liberator. The Prosecutor was left hobbled, one side of the ship blasted open, venting atmosphere and human lives. Its nanoswarm had been vaporized entirely. The Liberator fared better, but the damage from 6 ships was still heavy. The nanoswarm absorbed a lot, but the hull was still raked with kinetic force, rupturing it in a few places. Report, Minor damage taken. Ruptured sectors being isolated, Lieutenant Maritzu informed. Prosecutor badly damaged, but still operational. The Wren emerged from the conduit and immediately set about targeting the cruisers. The fleet started moving as Voight had predicted. 3 of the ships moving to the port side flank and the others traversing the dorsal flank. Small batteries switched to the frigates, Voight ordered. Everything else on the Prosecutor. More fire pelted the Prosecutor, subjecting it to a massive concussive force. Part of its rear section was blasted off entirely, massively reducing its propulsion. The Wren swept across the port flank, damaging one of the cruisers as it raked with its railguns and autocannon fire. It took minimal damage in exchange, the fleet concentrating on the Liberator. Buckling under a second wave of fire, the Liberator received more hull damage, this time causing a more serious breach. Serious breach on dorsal side, Maritzu exclaimed. We're venting into space. Sealing sections.
Prosecutor is disabled, Hannah added. It's drifting. Switch fire to the other battleships, Voight commanded, preempting Schafer.
One of the fleet cruisers was destroyed by the Wren, and there was another entrant to the combat arena. The Challenger emerged from the conduit. Notify the Challenger to open fire on the remaining battleship, Schafer reacted. Seconds later, the Challenger complied. With the focus of both the Liberator and the Challenger, the battleship did not last long. The sustained fire, demolishing it within seconds. Schafer would have anticipated the remaining ships would flee, but was surprised to find that they did not break off. With most of the fleet's firepower now destroyed, their attack was futile to the point of absurdity. Try and disable the remaining ships if you can, Schafer ordered, trying to find mercy where he could. Between them, the Liberator, Wren, and Challenger ended the threat quickly. 6 ships now lay vanquished, 2 totally destroyed with little hope of survivors, and 4 disabled, including their flagship.
Launch rescue ships, Voight decided. Rescue survivors where possible, but keep an eye out for Teel reinforcements.
Kane, how many did we lose? We have lost 49 crew members, Captain.
Damn. This could have been a lot worse, Captain, Voight assured.
It could have, Schafer nodded, but it needed not have happened at all. What the hell were they thinking?
They must have realized they couldn't win, Voight speculated.
They feared failure more than they feared death.
The combined crew of those ships was in the thousands, Voight observed.
Teel is not shy of shedding blood, Commander, Schafer replied. Even his own people.
Still, throwing themselves into a battle they couldn't hope to win like that, Voight reasoned. It's so pointless.
And all for one man, Schafer commented. Chapter 14.
How's he been behaving? Voight inquired. He's not put a foot wrong yet, Akari expressed. He's occasionally unsettling, but he's behaving. I presume he knows what happened? He found out pretty quickly, not sure whether he was told or just pieced it together himself. He's pretty quick at working things out. How intelligent is he? Intelligence is rather hard to quantify. He's not academically smart in that he doesn't seem to have any great knowledge in any given subject, but he does think on his feet and is very adaptive, Akari explained. This is just my observation, though, and not properly tested.
Akari and Voight talked as they made their way to the living quarters that had been assigned to the defector. Repair work was in progress, but the hull damage would be fixed upon their arrival at Geladron. Some of the dead had been recovered and were now stored in the morgue. Only about 12 of those slain were recovered, but they would be repatriated to their home planets for funerals. Seeing those bodies there had saddened Voight. Such a pointless waste in a futile show of aggression. Acceptable losses given the circumstances, but she hated herself for even thinking those words. Still, their deaths affected the wider community of the crew. Each of the victims had their own ties to so many others, and their loss would be keenly felt. They found themselves at the entrance to his quarters before they even realized it. They initiated the notification alarm, with Skenn answering just a few seconds later. "Doctor, Commander, come on in," Skenn beckoned. "No, Captain."
"He's far too angry at the moment," Voight expressed. "He didn't want to have to deal with you in his current frame of mind."
"Probably for the best," Skenn answered. "Leadership can extort a heavy toll. At least it does on those who are worth a damn."
Voight found this an odd comment for Skenn.
Was this an expression of respect? She was then distracted by a plethora of pictures scattered across the kitchen space worktop. They were all covered in random lines, abstract squigglies with no recognizable shape or form. Voight's gaze transferred to Skenn, who responded to her unspoken query.
This perplexes me as much as it does you, Commander, Skenn shrugged. Since the doctor removed those implants, I've had the insatiable urge to draw. The doctor was good enough to provide me with some material to work with, and I've been at it ever since.
What do these represent?
I have no idea, Skenn answered. I really don't know how this all works, or where it comes from. It's all new to me. I've never had the inclination to draw before.
Is this a side effect of the implants or their removal? It's too early to say, Commander. It is peculiar, and there is still so much about the brain we don't understand. We can map it and download it into a new body, but there's still so much that is unknown, Akari offered.
It's a compulsion, Skenn interjected. I don't recall doing any of those.
Has your recollection been affected at all?
My memory hasn't changed in any way, Skenn assured. I've just got some new traits.
As long as you haven't lost anything, Mr. Skenn. A lot of people have died over the contents of your head, and I wouldn't want all of this to be in vain.
Nice to know you have my welfare at heart, Commander.
Sarcasm aside, Mr. Skenn, I am interested in keeping you alive, and not just for selfish reasons, Voight corrected. But there has been an investment in blood which does up the ante.
I'm sorry for your crew members, Skenn apologized. But they are soldiers, and soldiers die.
Not if I have anything to do with it.
You did defeat the Teel fleet quickly, surprisingly so.
We had reinforcements. It was stupid of them to try it in this system.
That's why I chose this route, Skenn reminded. I knew he'd send someone after me, and they were always going to attack. Teel would have had them they hadn't. On the plus side, losing 6 ships so quickly may well blunt his anger.
The man is unconscionable?
With the heart of a purebred, Skenn added. Those men and women were dead from the moment they received their orders.
We've managed to save over 700 of them.
Good for you, but don't expect the same mercy in return.
I don't, but their cruelty is not going to define me.
At least I'm grateful for your mercy.
Don't go getting ahead of yourself just yet, Mr. Skenn, Voight warned. We do have a few conditions before we grant you citizenship.
I expected some conditions. What are they?
Firstly, there will be an intelligence team meeting us at our next destination to debrief you.
Expected. Go on.
Secondly, you are to be seconded to our custody for as long as we see fit, for the Republic to use as a consultant.
For how long?
You'll be granted citizenship once Captain Schafer believes you have acquitted yourself.
And what criteria do I need to fulfill to achieve his favor?
I don't know. The captain doesn't like you, so it could be a long time, Voight admitted. I can't say I have any reason to trust you either, but play it straight by us, and we'll play straight with you.
I guess it beats being in prison.
Even though you represent everything I abhor, I will ensure that you are treated fairly, Akari reassured.
I appreciate everything you've done for me, Doctor, but don't go out on a limb on my behalf.
I'm only doing what I feel to be right, Akari responded. Just don't make me regret it.
What's the terms, Commander? Am I allowed out, or am I under house arrest?
You'll be free to go anywhere on the ship with civilian authorization. You will only be allowed access to any other section in the company of a senior officer, Voight explained. Any violation will be seen as a transgression, and you'll be sent back depending on the seriousness of the violation.
What about planetary privileges?
You will be allowed on planets, other ships, and orbital stations only in the company of senior officers. You may be allowed further freedom over time, but only on the basis of strict adherence to the conditions laid out.
My consultancy, does that include being sent out on external missions?
It'll just be advisory only. Don't try to run before you can walk.
Not exactly what I envisioned, but an acceptable compromise.
Do you agree to the terms?
I agree to them, Skenn confirmed. I'll be your consultant.
Just one other thing, Mr. Skenn. I know you are used to working on your own, but here you are part of a team. This may be difficult for you, but it's something you are going to have to get used to. If you have any questions or any information you think may be of some use, please contact any of the senior officers, Voight advised. Try and socialize with the crew and build some relationships. Trust begins with getting to know people.
What if people get to know me and don't like what they see? Skenn quizzed. I'm not exactly a people person.
Well, one of the good things about trust is that you don't have to like a person to trust them, Voight posited. It can be earned irrespective of charisma.
Not sure whether to be relieved or insulted, Skenn responded.
I believe that very few people are irredeemable, Mr. Skenn. You can earn our trust, and we have to earn yours, and you're going to have to work hard to overcome the legacy of your past. But it is possible.
What if I can't?
Do you want to? Truly?
Yes.
Then we will find a way.